An entitled Karen breaks my $60,000 wheelchair and leaves me stranded. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old college student, and I've been using a wheelchair for the majority of my life. I've had some pretty expensive chairs in my time, but the one I currently use is by far the most advanced and expensive one I've ever had. It cost me a staggering $60,000. I'll explain why it's so pricey and why I'm so attached to it. So, this chair isn't just any ordinary wheelchair. It's specifically designed for people like me who have mobility impairments. It's packed with a ton of features, like adjustable seat height, tilt, and back angle, power assist wheels that help me go up hills and navigate uneven terrain, and a whole host of other things that make my life easier. It's also super customizable, and I've had it fitted specifically to my body, so it's incredibly comfortable and supportive. Now, why did I spend so much money on this chair? Well, as someone who's in a wheelchair 24/7, it's pretty much the most important tool I have. I use it to get around, go to school, see friends, go shopping, and do everything else that people who don't use wheelchairs take for granted. If my chair stops working, I'm pretty much stuck. And trust me, I've been stuck before, and it's not a pleasant experience. So, back to the story. I was on the bus tonight heading to a workshop that I was fairly excited for. Things were great until slightly before my stop when two adults got on, one with a toddler and the other wheeling a stroller. It's corporate policy that all strollers must be folded before being brought onto the bus, but not enough drivers actually enforce it. And this was one of those monster Cadillac strollers to boot. Karen, the woman with the stroller, brought her unfolded stroller on the bus and, seeing the front entirely occupied by disabled people, including myself, decided to push past toward the back. I could see her coming and I tried to warn her, but she just kept on going. "Hey, be careful with that stroller. You're going to hit my chair." Karen ignores me and keeps trying to squeeze through. "Careful! I can feel you tugging at stuff." Karen still doesn't stop. Finally, she managed to push through and moved back. I fumed for the next few blocks, pushed the button for my stop, turned on my wheelchair, and got a left brake disconnected error. I tried again. Repeated errors. The next several minutes were spent with the bus pulled over. Passengers were getting mad at me for causing a delay, while I panicked trying to figure out how to get off the bus. Finally, a guy flipped my electric freewheel release switch on and off several times, and that managed to convince my chair to work for me to get off my bus and get about 15 feet away before my chair suddenly turned itself off. I turned it back on. It started throwing up a charger inhibit error, which basically is the error you get when you try to start moving when you're still plugged into the wall outlet. The next hour was a progression of events that saw me sitting on the ground with the back of my chair opened up as I went through everything trying to figure out what the ever-living fuck was going on. I even called the police because I wasn't sure how I'd be able to get home. I tried to figure out what was wrong with my chair. I opened up the back of my chair and started going through everything, trying to find the issue. I checked the connections, the battery, the wires, but everything seemed fine. The more I tried to fix it, the more hopeless I felt. That's when I realized that I needed help. I called the police, feeling a mix of embarrassment and relief. It wasn't a usual call for them, but they were understanding and promised to send someone over to help. A long while later, the police arrived, and I explained the situation to them. They were kind and understanding, and they took a look at my chair to see if they could help. After a few minutes of inspecting and checking the connections, they found the issue. It turned out that two different things had gotten disconnected during the encounter with Karen and her stroller. The police officer helped me get the cover back on my chair, and more importantly, helped me get safely back into it. I was so relieved but so poised at the same time. I had spent all this money on a high-tech, state-of-the-art wheelchair to make my life easier and more independent, but it took just one careless and entitled person to bring it all crashing down. None of this would have happened if that entitled mother had just taken one goddamn second to fold her stroller up. Or, I don't know, stopped when I repeatedly asked her to, but no, she was far too important to do such basic shit like that. Wow, it's crazy to think that your chair costs more than a Tesla, and I didn't know people could be so stupid and impatient. Did you get the police do any investigation to find that Karen? Plus, why was everyone not stopping the Karen? It honestly hurt me to know some people only care for themselves. Karen and his bratty kid accomplished the task of hurting, humiliating, and almost getting me arrested over my Nintendo DS. This took place last year, in the end of summer, while I was waiting for my flight in the airport after a vacation with my family in Italy. The airport was pretty empty that day, despite it was supposed to be trafficked due to the big amount of people coming back from vacations anyway. I was playing with my Nintendo to kill time since my flight was late and I wanted to preserve my phone battery. I forgot the power bank at home. So me, 20, was quietly playing when this woman, who looked like 40 or younger, and his son, probably 10 judging by height, placed in front of me and started complaining about the flights being late and that she had business ECC. I stopped listening to her because I put on my earphones in attempt to escape her complaining about this and that. I can't stand listening to complaining that doesn't concern me. Time passes and a notice comes out from the speakers saying that my flight was going to delay again. Sighing, I put back on my earphone, and that's the moment where the show starts. Karen comes at me with his kid and asks me something. I remove my earphones and the conversation goes like this. Excuse me? Yes? Do you need something, ma'am? Yes, please. You see, my kid is getting very bored here. So I wondered if you could borrow him your video game to let him relax until our flight arrives. Nothing wrong till here, but you see, I don't trust random kids since every time I borrowed something to them, insert borrowed item, returned to me scratched, smudged, or even broken. So it was a, no, I'm sorry, for the little brat. The moment I said no, things started escalating. The tone of the woman changed from polite to arrogant, and the volume had rose, and the kid, who was giving me puppy eyes, started to give stink eyes. But why? You're not a kid anymore. You look like 25 or something, and you still play video games. Why don't you give that toy to my son so he can kill sometime? You don't need it this much. To be honest, if the kid would have promised to use it near me and returning it to me intact, I could have given up and letting him play, because he was a kid after all. I know that they become nervous if they don't have anything to do for a while, but the very moment Karen started speaking arrogantly, she lost every hope with me. Listen, ma'am, I don't borrow my stuff to strangers for a matter of principle, so even if you were some famous person, my answer would still be no. Plus, I recommend to lower your voice because people are watching us. I didn't really check if people were watching us, but it was clear by listening to the volume of her voice that anyone would have looked toward us. Well, I don't care if people are watching us, even better, because this way everyone will know how much selfish and childish you are, not borrowing a stupid video game to a kid. The conversation was getting out of hand. I could feel the glares of the strangers in the airport looking at me thinking I'm some sort of monster, and instead of saying anything that could worsen the situation, I decided to keep calm and go on. Ma'am, the only one acting childish here is you. Lower your voice before someone calls the security on you. The security will be called on you for being an absolute asshole, and when they will arrive, I will have that stupid video game of yours be confiscated, you little shit. I was starting to lose my patience, and I quietly say, almost grinding my teeth and still not moving from my seat, this conversation is over, please leave and don't show your face near me again for your sake. I know that sounded like a threat, but the reaction was as cringe as hilarious. Are you threatening me? Oh, you are so fucked up. I'm going to report you for threats. I thought the conversation was going to end and that she was going to complain to the manager or something. Typical things that Karens do. It was the first time for me dealing with this type of person. Everything could be fine as long as she leave me alone, but the real he'll start now. While I was putting my earphones back, the woman snatched them from me, and while I was going to say something, the little turd did something that changed forever my views about kids. In short, he came closer and spit in my shirt. I started seeing red. You little shit, I say, while I try to move away the brat with my leg, not trying to kick him or anything. She screams like crazy. Don't you dare hurting my son. After that sentence, she tries to slap me, but I grab her by her arm promptly before her hand reached my face. If she had succeeded in slapping me, I swear, I would have done something that I would have regret for years to come. She starts screaming and asking for help, even screeching that I was molesting her, and someone start moving in our way in attempt to stop the tumult. But that wasn't necessary because the little excuse for a human child does something I didn't even think kids were capable of, in terms of malignancy. He punched me in the nuts. That little shit with legs and arms was so malefic to punch a grown-up in the nuts. That kid was fully aware of the weak point of a male, yet he did it. Unbelievable. The pain does little except fueling the rage that was boiling in me. I must say, I'm a very patient person and all, but when I lose my shit, I don't have any self-control, so it always ends up bad. And that was going to end very bad for both me and they. I stand up from the chair and push away the woman, which start demonstrating with her son their impressive acting skill. She rolls on the floor screaming, and the little turd has the courage to fake a cry, while several people were getting close. I was confused, enraged, and shocked. I never dealt with someone who could be so malefic and shameless. I was literally speechless and frozen in place with my fists closed, in pain for the punch received in my sack. While standing still looking at the pathetic show she was giving, I feel someone grabbing my hands and handcuffing them. It was the security guard who clearly misunderstood and judged by the last scenes. He then escorted me to a white room with nothing but a table and started asking me questions after I calmed down. Everything I answered to those questions was, check the camera registration and you'll see. I was frustrated and angered. I didn't want to say anything at all, but I was thankful at the guard too for removing me from that place before I could get my hands on that woman. Something like 20 minutes passes, and the guards comes back and hands me a bottle of water. He was an understanding person after all, luckily. You can go, and forgive me for the cuffs. Your suitcases are in the other room. Would you like to press charge for aggression? I didn't want that bitch money, and just wanted to go back home without further complications, so I refused, but I had to take a final satisfaction before taking my flight. The speakers announced that my flight was ready, so before I go, I reach out to Karen and her son who were standing in the seat I was earlier quietly like nothing happened. I touch her kid in the shoulder and says, I think this belongs to you. You need it more than me, I say while bringing out the Nintendo. The moment I bring out the console, the little turd eyes became like cat eyes when they are in the dark, and her mother grinning in satisfaction as she thinks she obtained what she wanted. Hello, no. Little did she known, before handing it to him, I snap it in 2 pieces and I get a taste of their shocked faces. I dump the broken console on the legs of the little brat as I take my leave, hearing pointless talks in my back. It was the worst experience of my life, and made me discover that kids can be devils too, and I couldn't end giving it one to that pathetic woman, and her show. Single mothers who thinks everyone must get the world upside down just because they say it. When I think about it, I get overwhelmed with anger and disappointment, but then I think about the sweet revenge. I still can't believe it, and when I read that there are other similar persons, my feels goes to whoever has to deal with these piece of shits. Oh yeah, and for those wondering if breaking the console was worth it, yes, it was very old anyway, and all the saved data was on the R4, so I had no problem in breaking it. Never say no to pressing charges. That was your one mistake in all this. The one way to really teach her a lesson, and you said no because you thought it was about the money. Stories like this infuriate me. According to Karen, breastfeeding isn't allowed if you're a teen mom. Yeah, bizarre. So back in high school, one of my closest friends got pregnant and gave birth to the sweetest baby boy. She stopped going to school for a while to take care of her kid, but still did online school so she could graduate with her class. One thing we would do is go to one of the local food places near the high school on Fridays, and today we decided to go to this nice Chinese place that I frequent regularly, and the little old Asian lady knows me by name. This Chinese place has a sticker on the front door that says something like, breastfeeding will always be allowed, which is great, since that's what my friend is more comfortable doing for her baby. After we ordered our food and hung out in this little waiting area when the baby gets all fussy, she takes out the little cover and covers her baby and her chest as she starts to feed him. We keep talking until this woman and her son, who had to be around 10, comes in. I recognize the kid as one of the kids I looked after when I used to volunteer at a youth center. He comes up to me and starts talking to me and then asks my friend what she's doing with the baby. Before my friend could answer, the boy's mother cuts in. A disgusting thing is what she's doing. Don't you know better than to do that in public? And why are you even doing that if you're only a kid? My friend has an attitude sometimes, so I try to jump in before she would start to throw things. It's not illegal, and Mrs. L is fine with it. She has a sticker on the door. Mrs. L being the little old Asian lady by the counter, who was just oogling the baby a second ago. She smiles at us and continues to write some stuff down. The mother wasn't happy about this and continues with her BS. I'm sorry, but I'm just not okay with a baby breastfeeding another baby. Can you please just stop? She says in frustration. Mrs. L finally cuts in, and in her broken English, she says, nursing baby is a beautiful thing. You have problem, you leave. She then taps the order on the window that leads to the kitchen, and apologizes to my friend for the woman's nasty behavior. She then looks at the boy who is still next to me and says jokingly, your mother. She dummy, right? This makes the boy laugh, and the mother just grumble in her seat trying to stay as far from us as she could. When my friend finished and we grabbed our food, Mrs. L threw in an extra order of eggs rolled since they were my friend's favorite. Everything was fine until Monday came, and I saw the boy again. He pulls me off to the side and tells me that his mom said she doesn't like me or my friend. I just ask him if he still likes me, and he says yes. Yay. This Karen was just something else, wasn't she? The audacity to judge a mom trying to feed her hungry baby in a place that even has a sticker saying it's allowed. And to top it off, Mrs. L, the owner of the Chinese place, shut her down in the most epic way. I mean, who says nursing baby is a beautiful thing? And, you have problem, you leave? That's the kind of boss lady energy we all need. And the cherry on top was when Mrs. L threw in an extra order of eggs rolls for our friend. Talk about being a good Samaritan. I mean, who needs Karen anyway when you have Mrs. L? Am I right? What do you guys think of this absurd situation? Have you ever encountered a Karen like this? Anyways, click on the video on screen where a Karen thinks OP's hearing aid is spying on her, demands him to remove it. Yep, that's just paranoia to another level.